Welcome to the Korea Pro podcast. I'm your host, Jeongmin Kim, the Editorial Director of Korea Pro.
And I'm John Lee, the editor of Korea Pro.
Join us for a weekly 15-minute conversation as we dive into the most pressing stories shaping South Korea and dissect the most complicated ones for you.
From politics to culture, technology to society, we've got you covered. So stay ahead of the curve and never be sidelined again.
So get ready for a fresh perspective on South Korea's news. This is the Korea Pro podcast.
All right, today is Wednesday, February 21st, and we are recording our podcast episode a day earlier than we usually do. Now, Jeongmin, there was a video that went viral online in South Korea these past few days, something about the president's bodyguards dragging people out at a graduation ceremony. Could you help our listeners and our viewers understand what exactly just happened?
Well, President Yoon Suk-yeol invited himself to a KAIST graduation ceremony. KAIST stands for...
the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology.
It's in Daejeon, and it's one of the most prestigious universities in South Korea, where basically they grow most of the engineers and scientists that South Korea really needs. Right?
It's Korea's version of MIT.
Right, and then President Yoon went there to deliver the speech about how he has expanded and he will expand the R&D, research and development budget, which is a lie, honestly, because he cut it initially, and then
he cut it massively, and then he's raising it incrementally.
Right, and then it was back up because of the Parliament, the National Assembly.
Right.
Anyways, he was doing this speech in front of all these scientists, and then one student stood up among the graduates who was shouting. Initially, this guy had a picket, but the security guard took it away. So he started shouting, "Please don't cut the R&D budget, and please don't do the tax cut to the wealthy."
Sure.
Right, and then, well, sure, this was a guy who apparently was affiliated with the Justice Party. So it's not just a student. But the problem was not that. The problem was that, first of all, there were security guards who went undercover with just tons of graduation gowns there. And then they suddenly stood up and gagged him.
Well, I'm not sure if the bodyguards dressed as students is problematic.
No,
per
I
se.
mean that's not problematic, but the problematic part was the gagging part.
Sure, they
stood
dragged him
up,
out of
they
the
dragged
hall.
him out while he was screaming. Well, considering all the things that happened in the past few weeks or months, like a lot of assaults against politicians, I think honestly it's fair that there were that much security there. And undercover security, it's always there, and even in the U.S. or Japan or wherever.
Right.
But gagging someone, even when someone crazy saying something just extra crazy in front of a president, like no one should ever gag a citizen.
Well, I'm not sure if no limits is the way to go, but the thing what you just mentioned was that he had a picket. They removed the picket. They knew that he was going to pull some kind of stunt. And so despite knowing that he was going to do something, like shout or whatever, they knew that he wasn't carrying a weapon, and yet they decided to gag him and drag him out.
I think honestly removing him is fine.
Okay.
If he is disturbing something, and if it's per protocol, they can remove them. We can see in other instances in the past in Korea or other countries as well, they follow the security guards follow the due course to somehow remove them so that the event can go on undisrupted. And it seemed like I checked all the KAIST student community postings as well. There were some controversy about whether or not it was right for the students to use this event for this occasion, political protest. Like, sure, there is, like, people can debate about that.
All right.
But the part I am saying that's just 100% problematic is the gagging. It just shouldn't happen.
Sure. Now, when you say gagging, you mean that they shut his mouth literally with their hands, or what exactly do you mean by gagging?
Exactly what you just said.
Okay, so that's exactly what happened. All right. So now this is a problem precisely because whenever Yoon goes out to these international forums, he loves to talk about freedom and democracy, blah, blah, blah. He talks about freedom more than George W. Bush did. And yet, when it comes to practice, he doesn't really practice it all that well.
No, I think it would have been actually a great... First of all, it seemed like from the look of what kind of preparation they did with all the security, it seemed like they knew what was going to happen. If they knew it, actually, if they were smart, they would have used the opportunity to actually make the president respond to that in a very generous and professional manner, saying that, thank you for your passion for this budget issue, and I will make sure to listen to the young people's, policy advice. This was a great opportunity for him.
The key phrase there being, if they were smart.
Right.
But, oh well. It is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
But we are running out of time, so we need to move on to the next topic. All right. So next what happened was, of course, the party divorce, the New Reform Party with Lee Nak-yeon and Lee Jun-suk, my
Which headline did you go
favorite
for
person in
the
the world.
executive briefing to do the connotation on divorce?
The phrase that I used was irreconcilable differences.
Exactly. I loved it. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, what happened was that 11 days ago, or 12 days ago rather, Lee Nak-yeon, the former prime minister and former leader of the Democratic Party, and Lee Jun-suk, the former leader of the People's Power Party, they decided to form a large coalition party. And it
Big
wasn't
tent party,
a
as
big
they
tent
put it.
party. And it wasn't just them, it was defectors from the Democratic Party. They even had progressive members from the Justice Party.
Like Ryu Ho-jang, the
Right.
very young politician.
Exactly. And this is supposed to be a really big tent centrist party that was going to challenge the status quo. And 11 days after they formed the alliance, they decided to split up because they had so many differences over who was going to lead the election campaign strategy, messaging.
11 days.
11 days.
11 days. I tweeted or X'd that even elementary school kids stayed longer than that.
Oh God, I hate the fact that you just said X, but okay. Yeah, you tweeted that, yeah, elementary school kids date
No
longer
lies.
than 11
There are
days.
even terms that connotate like you dated 22 years, 22 days.
22
Is that
years,
sorry?
wow, okay. Okay, so they split up after 11 days, but Lee said something just recently. Could you tell us what he said?
Right, he was doing this emergency press briefing the day they announced the divorce and said that Lee Nak-yeon tried to erase Lee Jun-suk tried to erase Lee Nak-yeon from the party using his authority as one of the co-leaders, pushing him away from election strategy and deciding who runs for which seat, blah, 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 blah. And then Lee Jun-suk said that that's fake news, but still, I want you back. Is that going to happen?
This is my shocked face. I'm shocked that this happened. I cannot believe that these two political stalwarts and principal leaders could not stand each other and had so many disagreements. I'm devastated.
Well, let's just go through why this divorce matters now. Actually, Juna and I wrote a very short shelved story on last Friday. We wrote an analysis about why this potentially could be a game changer for South Korean politics, because all of the experts that we interviewed basically told me that this opens up a new possibility for South Korean politicians to move away from, personal attacks and demonizing each other, blah, 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 and opening up a possibility for a more centrist image of a merge between younger and older politicians. And I had to insert my own voice in there, saying that, you mentioned that they don't have ideological leanings compared to more, left and right politicians that they defected from. But you know what? There are more contemporary ideological rifts. I'm pretty sure Lee Jun-suk and Lee Nak-yeon wouldn't be able to reconcile, and that will be their challenge. And guess what happened? 3 days after we said that.
Well, last Friday, when we were all so much younger and more innocent back then, sure, okay, so there was some hope that this party might turn into something formidable, something more tangible.
Just because
sure.
also because it was so surprising to see it. I remember how you reacted when they announced the merger.
I was shocked.
He swore a lot.
Quite a bit. I think there might have been some yelling. But
Not because he was unhappy, because it was surprising.
And also unhappy. But yeah, this party is now kaput. Now, Lee Jun-suk just said today that if you want to come back to join the party again, I'm willing to give it a shot. He's like that really jilted ex-boyfriend who can't get a hint.
No, that's a good headline now.
All right. We should use that as a headline.
Yeah.
Seriously, next time. Jilted ex-boyfriend Lee Jun-suk.
And what happens going forward? How would you predict the potential good strategy that Lee Nak-yeon could use?
Now, Lee Nak-yeon could really try to double down on DP defectors, DP being the Democratic Party, of course.
There has been a very major politician that left DP recently.
Oh, yeah.
Who was her?
She was the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly.
And she's a big shot.
Oh, yeah.
I think she was elected 4 times or something, right?
Yes,
3
she
times or
was.
4
And the
times?
reason why she left the party was because of the inter-party election campaign strategy, where people who can only get so many percentage of the votes will end up being penalized when it comes to actual voting. Now, it's quite a bit of complicated, but what happened was that she felt like she was being taken advantage of, that she wasn't being respected, and so she left the Democratic Party.
She is technically more towards, like, she's on Chung Se-gyun's side, former prime minister, like, rather the Lee Jae-myung side, right?
Right, of course.
And there are a few politicians who also issued similar statements, although they did not leave yet, that they feel treated badly and that Lee Jae-myung is over-wielding his authority.
And these voices are getting louder by the day.
Oh, every single day, day and night. And then just what I just keep thinking is that this was supposed to be a very easy win for the DP.
All they had to do was not mess things up.
It was an election win on a silver platter because PPP were messed up at first.
And Yoon's popularity is
Yoon's
always
popularity
down
is
at
so
doldrums.
bad, and there's always something going viral because of presidential office's mistake.
Right.
It was supposed to be a very easy win.
And apparently they just cannot take an easy win.
But they're just internally so messed up. They cannot just come up with a strategy. And now that Lee Na-kyun's created this new party and drifting away from Lee Jun-suk,
Right.
which Democratic Party supporters hated, now there is actually a new possibility for progressive voters to
Actually vote for a different party that they might actually align with.
right. And with the DP internally fighting, what happens? PPP could actually win.
Despite all of their missteps.
Right. Although even if PPP wins, the policy-wise, it would be quite similar with the current state of the National Assembly.
Well, sure, there will still be gridlock in the National Assembly. People will still be fighting over this, and they will still be calling Yoon a dictator. It will still be business as usual. But what matters is which party will be able to maintain control of the National Assembly. Will the DP be able to do that? It doesn't look like it can going forward.
Yeah, like just 3 or 4 weeks ago, we said that it looks like DP has more possibility to win, looking at the polls. But then now, even the opinion polls show that PPP is more popular.
Again, I repeat myself, despite all of the ruling parties' missteps, and I'm using that word very politely.
So our conclusion, everybody's dumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unlock the full Korea Pro experience by joining our community. Stay informed, stay ahead, and never miss a beat on Korean affairs that matter. Subscribe today and transform the way you understand Korea.
All right, let's move on to the week cut segment, which is also one of the top stories in South Korea this week. Doctor strike, what's going on right now?
Well, the bovine excrement has hit the fan and it is all over the place. The government basically said, after a year of negotiations with the doctors, that they are going to increase the slot for medical schools starting next year. Right now, there are, if I recall the numbers correctly, 3,058 students that are allowed to enroll into medical schools every year.
Nationwide.
But the government plans next year to increase that slot by 2,000 or more additional seats. And because of this, doctors all over the country, trainee doctors as well, they've been putting in their leave of absence. They've been walking away from their jobs. The latest figure had more than 8,700 trainee doctors decide not to show up to work. And it has been shutting down operation rooms. It's a mess.
Does this practically mean that the top doctor, like the most senior ones, like the professors, are the one that's are left?
Yeah, they're left, but they're not super people. They're not superheroes. They cannot do all the things all at once.
Right, the surgeries are postponed or canceled and
Right.
so on and so forth. So the reason why I put this in week ahead segment is because this is going to impact South Korea in coming weeks potentially, because doctors are not standing down. What's the main point on the surface level that doctors are saying, and what do you think are the actual reasons that doctors are
Well,
pushing
what
for
the
this?
government said was that by 2035, there's going to be a huge shortage of doctors. And so the government wants to expand the number of seats, these slots for medical schools. But the doctors are saying that there is no shortage. What's really an issue, as far as what the doctors are saying, is that there is a disproportionate division of labor, essentially. How so many doctors are congregating in the capital city area, how they're going into certain specialized medical fields and not going into, say, something like pediatrics,
like
which
only
is
going
really
to
needed.
dermatology.
Exactly. And so the doctors are saying that these are the areas that the government needs to focus on. Force some people to go to the provinces, force some doctors to go into critical areas that are needed. Do not increase the number of seats. That's what the doctors are saying. Now,
Is that even possible, though, to force people to go to the provincial area?
Well,
like
that-
by incentives, I
well,
guess?
I suppose it could be possible, but if you really think about it, when it comes to practice, who are the ones who are going to end up getting forced to go to the provinces when no one wants to go? They're all going to be the junior doctors.
And also the population centered in the metropolitan area.
Right,
as
and
well,
the doctors are going to feel like they're being punished if they're forced to go to these areas.
Right, so what are their actual reasons for protesting this, you think?
Well, in my personal opinion, I think the doctors are just basically trying to have their cake and eat it too. They want to make sure that the number of seats are limited so that they can protect their own economic interests. And they are acting exactly like a trade union would, except that they are actually doctors and people's lives depend on them.
Just to play the devil's advocate a little bit, I do see a little bit of a point with some of the head professors of some of the doctors associations are saying is that as professors, they know that even with the current level of number of students, it's sometimes very difficult to thoroughly teach them because medical school is different from any other university. You have to actually teach them how to do surgeries and stuff. And if the number increases too quickly all at the same time, it puts strains on the educational level, it seems. That's the professor's arguments, and that maybe they could have went for a more gradual increase ultimately towards 2,000 more.
Well, that was basically the Democratic Party's position. Lee Jae-myung basically said that he criticized both the doctors and the government. He said that the doctors should go back to work, and he said that the government should reduce the number of seats to something a bit more manageable.
Which was actually quite interesting too, because it's like you mentioned, it was a quite rare scene of
Bipartisan unity.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have to remember the actual key number. By 2035, there's going to be a shortage of doctors. That's not too long from now. And we have to remember that it takes 9 years for someone to become trained to become a doctor. This isn't something that can happen overnight. And so the government's position is saying, hey, we need doctors and we need them fast. But right now, because elections are coming up and because of all of these political pressures, both sides are refusing to give in right now.
Let's move on to the second topic in the week ahead, which is the gender ministry. What's happened to the gender ministry?
All right. So
is it finally gone?
The gender ministry is not yet gone, but reportedly the gender minister, Kim Hyun-suk, has submitted her resignation. Again for the second time. But unlike the first time around, the president has not appointed a successor.
I mean, also, it seems like he reportedly accepted the resignation.
He reportedly accepted the resignation, but because he did not appoint a successor, what's supposedly going to happen is that the vice minister is going to serve as the acting minister.
Is there any possibility that they can use this for election peg and try to announce something surprising, like, oh, we were getting rid of the ministry right before the election?
Oh, definitely. This is a signal to the voters, especially to the conservative young male voters that are part of the base.
Lee Jun-suk may steal away soon.
Right. And Lee Jun-suk is trying to steal the male voters away from Yoon. Yoon is trying to get them back. Now, is this definitely an election strategy? There's no way to say for sure. But does it smell like one? Oh, definitely.
But will the government actually end up abolishing the gender ministry? Because there were a lot of international organizations that recommended otherwise.
Well, that's the million-dollar question. Now, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult than people think it's going to be to actually abolish the ministry. The opposition party will never let the PPP live it down if they actually get rid of the ministry. But by downgrading the importance of the ministry, by not having a serving minister, I think that's going to be a strong enough signal to the voter base to get the votes that they need for the upcoming elections.
How about downgrading it as an agency, like DAPA?
Well,
Defense Acquisition Agency.
That's certainly a possibility, but we've not seen that as strong hints that might happen. But
or renaming it to include men in the title.
Sure,
like
the Ministry of
Men and Women Equality, and
doesn't really roll off the tongue, does it?
Men and Women and Birth Rate Increase Minister.
Okay. I hope they come up with a better name than that, but sure. Yeah, it is possible they could downgrade it into an agency, but will they? I'm not quite sure. I think that might require a lot more political risk than anyone is willing to take.
Okay, please keep an eye on that. And for more, subscribe to Korea Pro newsletters. We brief you on all the important things that will happen in the coming week on Mondays.
Sounds good.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in.
If you want to know more, sign up for our daily executive briefings. We brief you on all you need to know from the past 24 hours and why they matter every morning in your inboxes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for your weekly dose of insight. And until next time, I'm Jeongmin Kim.
And I'm John Lay. Stay connected, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on the Great Pro Podcast.